All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our latest edition of Leaders Live. I'm Jennifer Hermes, and I'm the Content Director for Environmental Leader and Energy Manager today. And I'm super excited to be here with Michael Munnagle. Michael's Director of Business Development, Industrial Water and Remediation with Anguil Environmental Systems. Hi, Michael, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, me too. Anguil, just to give quick background, Anguil Environmental is a company that for 40 years, I understand, provides what the company describes as highly engineered environmental equipment and service solutions. They help clients solve complex industrial air and water challenges. And I know Michael has a ton of expertise to share, and we're looking forward to hearing about water and air pollution control from you. But first, Michael, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you. My background, a little bit, a Bachelor of Science out of the University of Wisconsin at Eau Claire. Most of my early professional career was in software, business development, sales management. Then after many years in that, I joined a small firm that brought a small patent portfolio of water treatment technologies from the bench scale to market. And then when sold that, began doing some water consulting and ended up with Anguil a number of years ago, helping expand this industrial water and remediation arena for them.
Great. So you have a lot of super experience.
Yeah.
A lot of expertise to share with us.
Learning. Always learning. So.
Cool. All right, well, I am going to jump right in. So my first question is, what are you seeing as some of the newest trends in water and air pollution control?
Sure. I think one of the biggest trends we're seeing is the POTWs, our publicly operated treatment works facilities, are definiteply hitting users with massive surcharges. We have one client that has seen their surcharge go up 5 times what they were originally paying a year earlier.
Wow.
We're also seeing them push the onus of some of this back on the industrial user to mitigate that right at the site because massive, they need to improve their infrastructure, and they obviously need the expanding water demands causing them to do that. So on a positive side, though, on a positive side, we are seeing a conscious effort by a lot of businesses to minimize the water they discharge. They're looking to reuse, they're looking to be a better environmental neighbor and minimize that discharge.
Right. Yeah, we've written quite a bit about that, but they're still dealing with those, they're trying to cut water use both for their own purposes and for the environment, but they're still being hit with price increases. So can you talk about why the massive increases now and why they're making the industrial users treat their waters prior to discharge when they were able to handle it themselves before? Sure.
I think I'm not the only one that feels this way, because it is something that's being talked a lot about. Is the infrastructure is very old and it's failing. Right. And then there's also this massive increase in growing demand that keeps hitting. So they see increased levels of TSS, BOD. So what they're doing is going back and needing companies to pay for it. And right. In the 2 cases I mentioned where with those clients, even though their discharge levels didn't change, they're forced to, pay higher costs to deal with them. And the end result is these companies, many of them, are being forced to really look at their systems or how they're treating the water and improving their treatment methodologies to meet compliance, to lower their surcharge costs so that they can, keep moving forward.
Right. So are companies able to reduce their, improve their operations, reduce their water use enough to offset those increases in charges? Is that something that companies are beginning to be able to do?
Yes, that's definitely a case with some of these significant increases.
Okay.
And that's a great question, because I think a lot of companies are starting to really look at capital costs and operational costs, doing proofs of concept, pilot studies, engineering studies, et cetera, to help show that return on investment, taking a broad look at what approaches might be available to help them save that money, leverage internal resources appropriately.
Right.
So that
right.
They,
And from what I understand, the utilities, it's only going to continue, that costs are going to continue rising for water treatment. Is that's what I've heard?
I definitely, I don't want to speak for everybody, but by all means, that's the way we're focusing on it. We're making the investment in the people and the process to go down that path, to try to promote, engage engineering firms and industrial clients, engage us early in the process. Don't wait for a problem. Let's talk, let's look what you have, and let's assume that this infrastructure is not going to heal itself.
Right.
The demands aren't going to minimize themselves. So let's be practical, pragmatic, and let's share a path or an approach that can look at mitigating your costs before it becomes a reactionary event, which typically then negatively impacts the bottom line for these customers when you're trying to chase it after the fact.
Yes, exactly. Right. Okay, so quickly, I know we talked about water, but how about on the air side in terms of air pollution?
Sure. I think a couple of things that we're seeing is smaller air requirements are being chased more now. Regulations are coming in on smaller volumes of air for VOCs that typically weren't there. It used to be like large printers. Now they're even looking off process vents, where they're going to have to look at abatement of some of those process streams. Regulators are looking at shutdowns. Startup shutdown and malfunction, that you need to report on those times. And in reporting on that, these are conditions that could result in these clients needing to shut down their process if too much contaminants are exposed to the air. So that's something really new that a lot of these companies have to take a look at and be aware of, and plan into their system to avoid those issues that can negatively impact them.
Right. So are regulatory changes one of the big challenges that industrial companies are looking towards in the next year or a couple of years? Absolutely.
I think it's they keep coming, they keep changing, they keep up with it. Since we don't actually do the permitting, we keep as close to it as we possibly can. And there's a number of regulatory bodies that like things like oxidizers, other air pollution controls have to meet for compliance or recommended compliance. But without a doubt, these firms need to be aware, and they need to be, when they're planning expansions, or typically expansions or things like that, they've got to be aware, and they've got to have that in place, because they could be hit with a substantial cost to find out something 3 years ago when they expanded a line they didn't need, they didn't have any regulatory requirements that were requiring it, but now they may have that. So without a doubt, it's an ever-moving target that they need to keep an eye on.
Right. Yeah. And same with water?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes. I think the biggest thing is the contaminant levels. The biggest indicator of that is the contaminant levels for a lot of these industrial clients isn't really changing dramatically. But like I said, we've got one client 5 times the cost for the same levels of contaminants and suspended solids and BOD that they had. They're now looking at 6-figure a month penalties for that.
Yeah.
Start adding that up, and that's real money real quick.
Yeah, that's a big hit.
Yes.
Okay, so if a company, they know they've got a need, and they're told that they're out of compliance, what are their biggest challenges? What are they looking at when they come to you? What are you seeing as their biggest challenges?
Well, I think the biggest thing we see when they realize they've got an issue is it's usually they're coming too late.
Okay.
You know, it is the compliance issue. It is a notification, a need that they need to improve. And then when that happens, of course, that's what they want to focus on. And rightfully so. I mean, that's what has the people upstairs kind of breathing down their neck, saying, you know, what's going on here? And unfortunately, then the real challenge for us is that we, you know, yes, that's very important that we address that need. But ideally, as a systems provider, we want to look at the entire landscape so that we can really provide the most benefit. Look at it strategically. What are the C-level initiatives that you might have? Is there reuse? Is there anything, you know, in the annual report that your executive, you know, your CEO was saying they want to work on from an environmental sustainability issue?
Right.
And then, you know, we want to take the time to say, what's your really desired, what does that really look like at the end? What kind of, you know, resources do you have available to your company to operate and maintain this? Are they qualified? Are they capable? Because, you know, if you know, maybe advanced automation and controls, even though it's a little more expensive, that might be something that really, over the long run, lowers your total cost of operation because you don't have the team, staff, or time or resources to take care of it. So
right.
We really, even though when they come in and they've got that, let's call it that bleeding neck wound in their mind, we really want to kind of slow it down and take a wider, more strategic look at it. And ideally, right, we can show the value, we can show a process that, you know, companies can show that process to them on how they can, you know, should be looking longer term.
Right. So you said you want to, you know, you want to dive down and help them beyond the bleeding neck wound. What kind of questions would you be asking them? What kinds of things could they be doing rather than just bandaging that wound? Like specifically, what could they do to reduce cost, improve operations, reduce risk? Where would you be helping them?
Sure. I think. Okay, I would say the first thing that we always like to do is there's typically one waste stream that comes in to be treated. But a lot of times that primary waste stream is made up of smaller sub-waste streams that come and get blended together. I think one of the things that we always kind of push for is let's get water analysis on all the waste streams coming in. We've had a couple cases where just by looking at these sub-waste streams, we could treat that small volume that gets before it gets blended in and actually come up with approaches that would lower the total capital cost as well as the ongoing operational cost. Maybe change a classification on the water so less of it might be being transported or, you know, truly needing to be treated. So I always like to say, let's get a full view of really the blended waste streams, the ones that make up the blended waste streams, and let's start there. And then, as I mentioned, I think that the next thing is be real honest with what you have in regards to resources and talent and what makes sense for your organization. You know, if I think the more blunt you can be or direct you can be in regards to your decision criteria, your budget, and your capabilities, that gives a supplier a lot more opportunity to really show you different approaches. There's many times there's so many technologies that go into these treatment trains to get these companies there. And within that, there's a number of approaches that you can leverage. Some might be a little more expensive, but again, that approach may have the benefit longer term of being more, cost feasible for you. So I definitely think that, knowing what you have in regards to your landscape, knowing what you have in regards to your people and your resources is key. And then really, like I said, being strategic and knowing what you have, having that good decision criteria, having that good, this is my desired, landscape, if you will, to take us through not only today, but what we see happening for our company over the next 5 years.
Right. So when companies come in too late, as you say, they probably don't have that view, that longer view.
I don't want to say that they don't, but I think it definitely, a lot of times they don't. Absolutely. And I mean, and that goes back to, kind of another best practice that we recommend both on air and water is and you'll see about, you'll see it on our site and on many people's, you want to document your entire landscape. You don't want to find out you're out of compliance or that you have an issue, and then try to go to a partner, try to find a partner or a supplier that can help you remediate that pain, and then find out that they're asking a bunch of information that you do not have readily available to you. So by all means, we always recommend, whether you want to use your engineering firm or a company like Anguil, companies like us are very cost effective at coming in, doing an engineering study, mapping out your entire landscape, so that when you have an issue, you've got the right drawings and documentation so that you can, give it to a service provider and say, we've got this issue. Here's what we were served with. Here's our landscape.
Right, exactly. So, okay, so aside from maybe waiting until they've already got a problem, that's one of the challenges that you see industrial companies having. Other challenges that you've been seeing recently?
I would say the only other thing that I don't really call it, I don't want to sound bad, I don't want to be too negative about it, is one of the things with the RFP processes for water treatment, I also kind of think that process sometimes isn't always done in the best interest of the client. Now, again, that's me speaking from my position. I actually feel that before the RFP goes out, it'd be so beneficial for the treatment providers, the system integrators like our firms and others, to sit down with the engineering firm or directly with the client and walk through all the different aspects of what's important in hitting that desired landscape. And that's including, we all come with this, disparate views of the process, all the different levels of expertise in different areas of the process. And by combining it all in, prior to putting out a document like that to get support, to get bids back, to find, that would be beneficial to get those voices all heard at a table and documented. And then I think, quite frankly, that the end user would benefit from that, because, for the fact that we work on this type of equipment, we know the pros and cons operationally. We can, we're going to ask companies like us, we ask those technical questions. Like I said, a lot of people just think their people are great, but really, do they have the time and bandwidth to support and maintain a system? So I think that's something that I'd love to see change in the industry, and not just have, sometimes it almost feels like the process tries to be a little too commoditized. And I think that, yes, there's times that a simple treatment piece of equipment can work for a client, but generally, a lot of these industrial clients, their process is unique to themselves. And you need to respect that, and you need to understand, I think that you want to be talking to these vendors and not just going on a checklist. These 100 people all check these boxes, and thus this one has the lowest price. Let's talk to them. I think you want to involve them early, have the conversation, find out what their approach is, and find out who aligns with you. And then, that's kind of one of the other things that, best practice. I would, if I was an industrial client, I would say, I want to get this voice at the table early in the process. And then I want to have something in this process that says, you know what, the price isn't the only thing that matters. I want to understand what are the investments these companies made in the people and process, so that I know exactly what happens once I issue that PO, that they've got the expertise not only to, take my order, but then obviously, design, system integrate, deliver, install, commission, and then service me for the lifetime of the system. I want to have this 20, 30 years.
Right. So they're not looking at a one size fits all solution.
I definitely would be caution anyone that if they see someone talking to them and trying to commoditize it, that would be definitely a point of concern, because I not to sound dramatic or anything, but again, I think everybody's is different, and there's nuances from the C-level initiatives that we talked about all the way down to, everybody does, everybody's focused on different things. Last year, for example, on the air side, we did over 40 preventive maintenance on 14 other competitor systems because they're not, some of them aren't as focused on the service aspect of it. Well, I think that's important. I think that's an important item that should be brought up in a process, and that might not always be, they might have third parties that they would rely on or something like that. But I think if I was the end user, those are the types of things I'd like to know. How are these things really coming down? How are the mission critical aspects of the system coming together?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is a little bit off what we were just talking about, but a few minutes ago you said an industrial client, needs to ask, who do I want at the table? What about internally? Who should they bring to the table internally? Is it just a facilities manager, or what type of person? Is it useful to bring in the C-suite at the beginning? Who should be there?
I think by all means, all those people from the C-level down should definitely have a voice. I mean, we definitely like to talk about, all the decision process and all the decision criteria. And we typically start at the C-level because, if they're not happy, no one's happy. And they've got initiatives and strategic objectives that they want to have, many times to shareholders, many times as a public statement that they make and put in their annual reports. And they want to live up to that. We want to make sure that we encapsulate that and address that. So like I said, if they can go back from the C-level all the way down to the users, the people that are going to, let's be honest, the solids handling aspect of it, let's find out what their capability, what their workload is. And there's different ways to approach that. And then there's different benefits on that. So getting as many voices is obviously the more ideal situation. A lot of times it's very difficult. I mean, because people are trying to be efficient, and, I definitely understand that my utopia of how I'd love these processes to go would be, cost prohibitive in some cases to these firms. But by all means, I think those are the types of questions that, regardless if that stakeholder's at the table, people should be asking.
Right. Okay, that's great. I realize I have 600 other things I'd love to ask you, and we've been talking for a while, so I'm going to stop asking questions and see if there's anything that I haven't asked that you haven't gotten a chance to cover. Anything else you want to share?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I'd like to say is kind of go back to my statement of engage early with potential partners that you're looking at. There's no harm. A lot of companies are set up to that want to become the product experts. Engineering firms, our sales and marketing efforts are definitely focused on saying, listen, we're not a competitor to you. We have 40 engineers on staff, and they're designed to complement your bench. A lot of times these engineering firms find themselves short of resources because they are busy, but they have needs, engineering studies, pilot studies, et cetera. You know what? Contact firms that are living and breathing with the type of equipment. They're touching it on a daily basis. We're servicing on a daily basis. Get them involved early. Leverage them as product experts to help make your clients happy. And obviously for the industrial user, obviously just pick up the phone and call. You've got a lot of very talented, knowledgeable people in this arena that are looking to help people and understand that, that's the way this industry works. It's just a lot of people that are trying to bring the value to clients and know that it'll get paid back somewhere down the road by being a good business partner.
Right. Great. Thank you.
So,
well, like I said, I would love to ask you 100 more questions, but we'll leave it there for now. Michael, thanks so much for joining us and sharing all your expertise. And folks watching, if you have any follow-up questions, you can contact Michael. His information should be on your screen. But Michael, can you just, in case they're not seeing it, can you tell us how to contact you?
Sure. I always say the best way is my mobile phone, and that is 612-875-5002. Please call anytime. Otherwise, I know a lot of people like email. Real simple, Mike, M-I-K-E, dot Munnagle, M-U-N-N-A-G-L-E, at Anguil.com. And that's A-N-G-U-I-L. And would love to talk with you. Any questions, would happy to have somebody from our team, myself, respond to you. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you too. I did too. And hopefully we can do it again so I can get some more of those questions asked.
I would love it.
If viewers have any questions for me, you can contact me at jen@Business Sector Media. And I know this was a lot of information to take in. If you want to watch it again, or if you want to share it with your coworkers, you'll find it on our websites, Environmental Leader or EnergyManagerToday.com under the Leaders Live tab. It'll be there starting tomorrow. So thanks again to the viewers, and Michael, thanks again for all the great info. It's been a pleasure. All right, thank you. Take care.